Coming up on iOS today, while Micah is away, Matthew and I will play with Supercharging Shortcuts with some awesome apps that can really show you what you can do.
Podcasts you love.
From people you trust.
This is Twit.
This is iOS Today, episode 623, recorded Tuesday, October 11th, 2022. Supercharge your shortcuts with these apps.
This episode of iOS Today is brought to you by Policy Genius. By making it easy to compare your options from top companies, Policy Genius can help you find the financial safety net your loved ones deserve. Head to policygenius.com/iOS to get your free life insurance quotes and see how much you could save. And by Bitwarden. Get the password manager that offers a robust and cost-effective solution that can drastically increase your chances of staying safe online. Get started with a free trial of a Teams or Enterprise plan, or get started for free across all devices as an individual user at bitwarden.com/twit.
Hello and welcome to iOS Today, the show where we talk all things iOS, tvOS, watchOS, HomePodOS, and of course all of the OSs that aren't macOS that Apple have to offer. All of the devices that involves, and of course all of the great things that you can do with those devices. My name is Rosemary Orchard, and I am joined this week by my special co-host for the week, Matthew Cassinelli. Welcome, Matthew.
Hello, Rose. It's great to be back on the show.
Well, thank you for coming back, and thank you to Micah for taking a break at this opportune moment, because of course every year Apple updates iOS, but it's not just iOS that gets updated, it's all of the other features and things that are built into the operating system, and that includes shortcuts. And this year Shortcuts has really brought a way for other apps to show off how awesome they are inside of it and just take advantage of the fact that you can really customize Siri. And so I thought it would be a nice start to the show for folks who are, new to shortcuts and picking things up, to start a little bit with a couple of useful apps that people can use to enhance shortcuts. And then Matthew, you had a great article over on iMore about 50 apps with app shortcuts, which obviously we're not going to cover all of them, but I thought it would be nice to talk about app shortcuts, what they are, and have a couple of those examples.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm excited. Let's do it.
All right. Well, one of the apps that I wanted to mention, because I often end up bringing this up in Shortcuts Corner as a great app for people to use, is Data Jar. Because if you think of a shortcut as just, something that goes from here to here, and it picks up bits of data on the way, and then it kind of just drops it at the end, and that's it. It goes boom, disappears into thin air. Data Jar is a really great way of saying, okay, so this little bit of data that I've picked up or created at this point in time, I want to keep it so that the next time that I go along here, just like geocaching, you can leave something for yourself later, you can store it. And Data Jar has just so many different ways of storing data. And I really like the fact that it's a great app and it's free, but it's also available on all of your devices. So it doesn't matter if you're using shortcuts on your iPhone or your iPad or your Mac, you've got, this data available to you, and you can manually add data too, which means that you can, just copy something over to it and get started with it that way. I don't know how much you use Data Jar, Matthew, but I find I'm using it all the time.
Definitely. I don't use it for everything, but it has some very specific purposes for me. One is kind of storing sensitive information that I would otherwise have in my shortcuts, but I don't want to share with other people, or I don't want to copy and paste and reuse multiple times. For me, a simple one is API keys, but another one is that's how I access information online. And if you got that information from one of my shortcuts, you would be able to delete all of my shortcuts from my Airtable database and things like that. So I have this extra layer of security where that's never actually in my shortcut. I just use Data Jar to get the information in, and then I can use it temporarily, and then it's gone as well. Another one is passwords. I actually have my profile picture in there because that's a really annoying thing to find anytime I need to upload it. And it's just I stored it as an image file in there, and then I can get it back all the time. So I feel like it's good for just storing specific information like that. And then another clever way to use it is kind of just having a temporary piece of information somewhere that tells you that something happened. So a common thing is like trying to know if this file exists or not. And you can say like check for it and then just put a little just 1 into data jar. And then if that 1 exists, then it's real. Otherwise it doesn't have, it's not there. So there's kind of different unique ways to use it.
Yes, I do something similar with one of the apps that you actually called out as well as the apps supporting app shortcuts. So I have a daily note that I create every day to help me manage my workday. And each of these notes has a unique ID. So what I have in Data Jar is I have a little entry, which I should be able to pull up to show folks. But basically what I do is I just store the ID of the entry underneath the date, which just helps me keep track of it. So I've got my data jar here, and you can see that I've got some useful pieces of information. Like I've got my project template here, so I will know, so I can just pull that template in again and again. I've got the ID of the project, so I can reuse that. But under dailies, you can see, I've got the date as the key, and then I can just pull the ID of the note. So when my shortcut runs and says, hey, do I need to make a note? It can check here, and if there's an ID in here, then it knows that it can just skip the rest of it, and that's it, it's done. Which certainly saves me a lot of time. So this is kind of a way of doing global variables. And another app that can do something similar, as well as many more things, is Toolbox Pro, which has a whole bunch of extra actions. If you ever want to know which speaker is the audio output right now, Toolbox Pro is your friend. Are you in light mode or dark mode? Toolbox Pro. Is there a VPN? Yep, Toolbox Pro. Alex Hay, along with Simon Stovering, who is the creator of Data Jar, both of them have created several really useful apps for shortcuts. If you're a Notion user, Alex has also created Nautomate. And another one that he's created, which I like, and I know that you've raved about, Matthew, is Logger for shortcuts. So you can actually add logging into your shortcuts yourself, which is really cool. So that you actually know what's going on, that this shortcut did run or didn't run as time goes on.
Yeah, Alex's apps are very useful. Logger for sure. That's like the only way I've been able to get to these deeper levels of how I log my shortcuts into Airtable and publish them to my website, because I just have a lot of complicated steps, and just understanding exactly what's happening with each request and things like that is super helpful. Toolbox Pro also, if you need to deduplicate information, that's definitely, they have a deduplicate action, which you can accomplish through regular expressions and things like that, but I don't ever remember what that is, and so I just like using this action. And another random one that I use is you can generate an image out of just like a color. And so for the folder images that I have on my shortcuts library, I basically create a white background and then put the icons of the shortcuts onto that background using shortcuts. And so I generate every one of those images on my website using Toolbox Pro. And there's no other way for me to do it, and I'm very thankful.
Yes. Yeah. It even actually has a generate icon feature. So if you just need to generate some like fake app icons for something, then you can use Apple's SF symbols. That's their symbols library, along with Toolbox Pro to do things, which is very handy. And I really like that. Another useful app, which I use for things like, hey, remind me to check my reminders 20 minutes after I get home, or just I have a separate iPhone here running an automation server, just runs shortcuts whenever it gets pinged to, is Pushcut. Now, full disclosure, I'm part of the team who's behind the development of Pushcut now, which is quite a lot of fun. We've been adding some cool new features, but it's really nice to be able to, get a notification that when you tap it will run X shortcut with this input, or have a widget that you can update on one device and it will just change on all of your devices to have, whatever data in it that you need. So you'll know, for example, the next calendar entry of this particular event is going to be in, 2 weeks and 4 days, or 2 weeks and 3 days, 2 weeks and 2 days, or whatever it is. And, just giving yourself a few more options there, which is really cool. Plus,
Totally.
I like getting super nerdy with it.
I'm really glad you honestly joined the team, and I would have mentioned it if you hadn't, because it's kind of a missing side of shortcuts that you kind of can't get otherwise. And I still gotta have you on my stream to talk about it, because I gotta get a lot deeper. I've been finding some specific times where I need it lately, and I I just have 4,000 shortcuts now, so setting those all up in Pushcut is going to take me like 2 years, maybe. So
I don't think so. There's a pro tip. There's a bonus one action shortcut for just importing all of your shortcuts, which makes it a lot easier. You were talking earlier.
I broke that for you guys.
That's okay. We're working on some improvements there. You were mentioning earlier about Logger for shortcuts and how that's helped you debug some shortcuts. Another one I should mention that's related to that is Jayson, Jayson. So if you're working at all with complex data and so on with shortcuts, then Jayson is really helpful for viewing JSON JavaScript object notation data and just pulling that information out so that you can actually do something more useful with it. And especially on your iPhone, if you've got a really small screen, you know, even on the full-size iPhone, there is no more mini anymore. You know, there's not a lot of space there. So being able to just open that data so that you can pop back and forth between shortcuts and that data or split screen it on your iPad makes it really, really helpful so that you can just jump around and quickly hop to it and get whatever it is done.
Yeah, I use this one as well. I like even just the pretty print feature of it is really nice to clean up just out data and look at it manually, but then you can also dig in through each level and copy it out. And I've definitely for Logger and alongside it, those are two that like help me do some really deep development work, which is impressive.
Yes. Yeah. And one other app that I wanted to mention in this section, which is very useful if you are pulling in data and you just need to put it somewhere temporarily. You know, data jar is great for a lot of these things, but if I've got files that I just need to temporarily be able to hold on to while I'm doing things like developing shortcuts or similar, then Yoink is one of my favorites. And it allows you to, you know, just pop a file into Yoink and keep it around until you've used it and then make it disappear. And you can lock your Yoink shelf as well. It's a sort of a shelf type app where you just drop files for a bit until you don't need them anymore and then get rid of them. So Yoink is available on iPhone and iPad, but there is a separate Mac version as well, which works really well. And the developers made some very nice apps, which are well worth checking out. I know that I've mentioned Transloader and similar apps on the show before, and folks have really enjoyed all of those. So what I wanted to do next, Matthew, was actually dive into some of the app shortcuts. But before we do that, I kind of feel like you need to tell people what an app shortcut is, because it's new to iOS 16. We've kind of seen something a bit like this before in the gallery, but what is it for folks who don't know what an app shortcut is?
Sure. So it's been a little confusing with all the naming changes from originally everything was just a Siri shortcut. Then they were added into the Shortcuts app, and then now we have app shortcuts. So this is a feature where all of your apps that support this can automatically generate a folder of shortcuts for you in a dedicated section below your custom shortcuts, as they're called now in the app. So basically, when you pull it up, you'll have a list of all these apps, and you can tap on them, and they'll have shortcuts there available, ready to run. You can add all of those to Siri, and they'll also, by default, there's a little banner at the top that says like, hey, do you want to add these to Siri? And once you do that, you can just run them with Siri. And then also they'll appear in Spotlight, and they'll automatically generate for all of the different things you're doing in that app. So a good example is the Card Pointers app, which is a way to basically use the right credit card to get the right points at the right time for like specific purchases. And so he has a setup for every single store that has shortcut support or that he could use with card pointers. There's a shortcut for it in the app already. So you basically have hundreds and hundreds of shortcuts that you can use. And if you're at Target and you wouldn't even set this up beforehand, but you could say card pointers for Target to Siri, and it would take you to that card and tell you which one to use right away. So it's basically a feature that enables new users to have all of these shortcuts automatically generated for their apps without having to set them up. So you can kind of open shortcuts and have this full experience right away. Plus, it's kind of powering everything that Siri can do now, because this is kind of Apple's strategy going forward. Rather than defining, here are the things that Siri can do, now it's up to the apps to say, here's what you can do with Siri. And then it's kind of already installed and hooked into the Shortcuts app right away. So it's a pretty powerful feature, but I think what's kind of weird about it is that it does require developer support, and it is kind of specific on how developers implement it too, because there's kind of like new capabilities inside the Shortcuts app. There's the whole spotlight feature and being able to find it elsewhere on the system. And then there's also like Ask Siri, or Siri tips is what it's called. So when you do something in an app, and before there would be an add to shortcut button afterwards, now it just tells you, hey, just ask Siri and you can do it because it's already built with an app shortcut in the Shortcuts app. So it's pretty interesting feature, but there's only a few apps adopting it so far. And so it'll kind of take a while to have this fully roll out and be a brand new Siri experience kind of thing.
Yes. Yeah. And one of the things to note if you are looking for this is some developers have been a little bit held up because it doesn't work super well with the old style shortcuts, which they may have previously used. But if you're looking for these, then when you open up the Shortcuts app, if you're in this sort of gallery view with all the tiles on the screen, then you can just tap back to Shortcuts in the top left. If you've got folders like I do, then you'll need to scroll down below those or collapse those, and then your app shortcuts will be displayed underneath. And when you tap into an app to look at the app shortcuts, then you'll see that you can turn on talking to that particular app with Siri. So in this particular case, I'm looking at Crouton, which is one of my favorite recipe apps. It's one I've talked about on the show before. It's the one where it can do recognition of what you're doing. So when you open your mouth, it will show you, for example, the ingredients list if you're in that interactive view. And so Crouton, it's a really cool feature that means that you don't get flour or whatever it is all over your iPhone. No more raw chicken juice on your devices, for example. So I can see that there are 4 actions here, but I can also turn on talking to Crouton. And all you do is you either press and hold the side button, or you say the magic incantation, and then, whatever the name of the shortcut is. So create a recipe with Crouton, get recipes from URL with Crouton, get recipes for date in Crouton, which is tied into the meal plan, which you can also use, create a meal plan with Crouton. And if I tap on this, then it will actually just go ahead and run the shortcut. That's it. I don't need to do anything else. But if I cancel out of that, then instead I can tap on the 3 dots in the top right, which is usually in a shortcuts view how you would edit the shortcut. And now here I can control whether or not something's suggested in the search. So if an app has suggested a shortcut and it keeps showing up in, for example, Spotlight, when you search on your phone and you just don't want this showing up, then you can actually turn off suggesting it in the search. And you can also choose to use it in a new shortcut, which will then take that app shortcut and put it into a new shortcut for you to use yourself, which is just very, very nice to be able to have. And, when I tap done, this gets added into my shortcuts for me so that I can use that. And, it's amazing how many apps have actually got shortcut support with these app shortcuts. For some reason, it's not showing me that many. I have a feeling I may need to reboot my phone because it's only showing me 10 apps right now, and I know I've got way more than that installed. But quite a few apps have got some really cool shortcut support, aside from Crouton. One of which, of course, is one of my favorites, Drafts, which I've already added the talk to Drafts, hence the prompt here not having that option there. But you can see there's lots of different shortcuts here that I can use with my favorite app, and I don't have to create anything for this. It just works. Folks may have seen before previously in the gallery, there was a section of shortcuts from your apps. And I believe if you scroll around and keep digging, then you may actually find that still pops up very occasionally. But the idea of this is it replaces those suggested shortcuts actions from your apps with actual shortcuts that just work without you having to go through and set things up. So, yeah. Matthew, do you want to tell us about a few of the apps that you're really enjoying the app shortcuts from?
Sure. Let's see real quick if I can get this. Does this look good? Is it acceptable now? Okay. Sure. So I've got a whole set of them. I was furiously looking on Twitter the day iOS 16 came out and finding every single tweet that I could about it. And so I ended up finding 50 apps, which is actually super impressive. And a lot of indie app developers jumped on it, which was cool. There's a whole set of different things. I mean, I actually wrote an article on iMore collecting all these, and I grouped them into different categories. Let me just pull that up for my own reference here. So, I mean, there's definitely tons of cooking ones. Like Food Laps is the one where it's kind of like, if you the premise of the app is if you're trying to like stay healthy, but okay, I did go and get in and out this week. I lapsed a little bit there, and then you track those times. So I think the goal is overall you want to have longer periods in between those lapses. So that's a good app, and you can kind of immediately set those up to record it or get rid of one if you're like, no, that was fine. Like it's an interesting way to like think about your food in a different way. Yeah, you already mentioned Crouton. I got some for like cuisine. These can scan your barcodes and get different recipes. So a good example for a lot of these apps is basically I would have gone in, like even me specifically, I like to go in and make shortcuts for like everything an app can do. And then now basically Apple has done that for you. Like I've joked that it's like my collection are my Matt shortcuts, and then these are the app shortcuts, because it's like the same kind of thing where I just want to be able to do any little feature with these apps. So I think this is huge for new shortcuts users, because I can admit that I think most people don't have the time or patience as me to go and set these up. They just want to use them. That was always my premise of distributing shortcuts online. It's like, just use these. You don't have to go set up that basic thing on your own. So now Apple's kind of doing it for you on inside shortcuts. So other categories of apps, like there's different health ones. I think Lift Log is an interesting one where you can kind of add your routine and log it as you're going throughout your workout. Let me see. Oh yeah. I liked Mango Baby. This was an interesting, hold on, where is it in the app? I actually, you know what? I'm having issues with shortcuts as well because I'm on the betas. It's not showing these ones, but that's like if you have a newborn in the house, you can like track when you fed him a bottle or something like that, and that kind of information. I think just for parents, having a one-hand device or something that they're not even holding and being able to yell out to Siri to log the thing sounds absolutely fantastic, when in real life you don't want to be picking up your phone all the time and you're like not bothered to do it. One I've been meaning to set up, because I just moved to Alameda in the Bay Area, and so there's a beach nearby, and I want to know when the tide is in and out and things like that. So a tide guide is a nice. This was actually featured on the Apple Watch Ultra as like the little action button thing going on. But there's another good app shortcuts one. So it's kind of a lot of ways to use. I think shortcuts and app shortcuts as a feature is kind of expanding on some of the like functionality that is otherwise in these apps and in shortcuts, but takes a lot of effort for people to take advantage of because they have to go set it up themselves. So Apple is kind of now like, here, we'll just have these generated for you. And if you want to take them to the next level and go deeper with custom shortcuts and adding multiple steps and giving them your own titles and things like that, then you're already at that point and you don't need to understand, does this action relate to this thing going that direction or something like that?
Yes, and I think, it's one of those things where you and I both love shortcuts, and we get, plenty of feedback every week from folks who also love shortcuts. But something that we do also get from folks is, I don't really know where to get started. It feels kind of overwhelming. The one thing I will say is if you're looking for these app shortcuts, and like me, you scroll down to the bottom of this list, and there aren't many apps there. And, maybe you've seen one of them mentioned in Matthew's article, or you saw in the updates release notes for an app that it should have these and they're not here. Just like the widgets, if they're not there, I'm afraid the solution is try turning it off and turning it back on again. Every so often, iOS gets a little bit stuck as to what it's supposed to be able to show you, and it just doesn't show you something for a while. But if you turn it off and turn it back on again, obviously I'm not going to do that right now because we're recording a show here, then it will almost certainly update to add these things back. Everybody should have voice memos as an example in here. It came with iOS 16, and voice memos just has two shortcut actions or app shortcuts, which is record voice memo and play the last voice memo that you recorded. So if you don't see that, make sure you're running iOS 16, folks. If not, you'll probably want to hop on that update train before Apple pull iOS 15 out from under your feet. But yeah, take a gander and see what shortcuts, actions, and apps providing direct shortcuts there are. Also, something to mention, just because an app doesn't have app shortcuts doesn't mean it doesn't have actions. You can still go in and check. And there will be a lot of apps that do have shortcuts actions that don't necessarily show up in app shortcuts because maybe their action alone doesn't really help you in many ways. So for example, CardHop has got some app shortcuts that I do remember, but something like setting a focus filter for the app is not going to show up in the app shortcuts. It doesn't really make a lot of sense. So go take a look and see what you can do, and maybe you'll get some ideas. But just because the app that you're looking for there doesn't have the shortcut donated that you think that it should be able to do, doesn't mean it can't do it.
Totally. That was kind of what I was hinting at when I introduced it, is that there is sort of just like how this should be adopted by developers wasn't super clear off the bat from Apple. And I think does take like specific implementation, because some apps are going to have that thing like card pointers where they generate tons of shortcuts for you to use based off of like a specific category that has just like lots of options. But then there's ways that you can pull in data and use it in your multi-step custom shortcuts and do a lot more with that. So I think that could be confusing, is that you have like all these apps that support shortcuts, but they don't support app shortcuts. And so I think that's where the naming part can be a little bit tricky. But that's also, it's brand new. So I do feel like in the next year, it'll probably settle in a little bit more. And it's kind of like, if you do see an app shortcut that you like, you could add it as a custom shortcut and then look for the other steps supported by that app. And that's a good way to kind of explore what's possible. And then the other like very tiny thing is some of the app shortcuts are generated by what's in the app. And so if you haven't opened the app recently, it can refresh kind of like the folders or something like that'll then show up in app shortcuts. So just a little detail.
Yes. Yeah, definitely worth remembering that these things will update over time, and, we'll get more and more of them as time goes on. Now, before Matthew and I dive into the news, Micah, despite not being here this week, has got a little message for us.
Hey, Rosemary and Matthew will be back in just a moment. Thank you both for the excellent show this week. But I want to take a quick break to tell you about Policy Genius. They are bringing you this episode of iOS Today. Look, we all hope that we never need life insurance, but the fact is, mortgage payments, childcare, and other expenses, they don't disappear when you're gone. And many people have life insurance through their workplace, but it may not offer enough protection for your family's needs, and it also won't follow you if you leave your job. Since life insurance typically gets more expensive as we age, now is the time to buy. Policy Genius will give you a smarter way to find and buy the right coverage for you and for your family. My family had the unfortunate problem of losing a few people in our family over the past 2 or 3 years. And I am so thankful that those family members who we lost had life insurance, because it meant that while we were dealing with the grief of loss and, trying to celebrate the life of the person who was gone and mourn the loss of that life, there weren't all of the extra stresses that come from the expenses involved when someone passes away. And so even in that simple way, life insurance is so valuable. And Policy Genius can help you find life insurance that works for you. It's built to modernize the life insurance industry. In fact, their technology makes it easy to compare life insurance quotes from top companies like AIG and Prudential in just a few clicks to help you find your lowest price. With Policy Genius, you can find life insurance policies that start at just $17 per month for $500,000 of coverage. And Policy Genius has licensed agents who can help you find options that offer coverage in as little as a week. And I think this is great, avoid unnecessary medical exams. The licensed agents at Policy Genius work for you, not the insurance companies. They're not incentivized to recommend one insurer over another, so you can trust their guidance. There are no added fees, and your personal information is private. It's no wonder why they have thousands of 5-star reviews on Google and Trustpilot. And hey, while you're there, Policy Genius offers quotes for home, auto, pet, renters, and more. Your loved ones deserve a financial safety net, and you deserve a smarter way to find and buy it. Head to policygenius.com/iOS or click the link in the description on our show page to get your free life insurance quotes and see how much you could save. That's policygenius.com/iOS. Thank you, Policy Genius, for sponsoring this week's episode of iOS Today. Let's head back to the show.
And now it's time for the news. And I don't know about you, Matthew. I've yet to find great shortcuts actions for Find My, specifically Find My Suitcase. But Lufthansa seems to be having a little bit of a crisis as to whether or not you're allowed to find my suitcase with an AirTag. And I don't know if you were reading about that, but I was reading about that going, I'm pretty certain AirTags are not actually explicitly banned in luggage. And it turns out that, oh, wait, they're not. Lufthansa misread or somebody at Lufthansa misinterpreted some information where it's being considered whether or not AirTags should be banned from luggage. But based on the fact that their lithium batteries are disposable and so small, it seems unlikely that they are going to be banned. And the real reason that airlines want these things gone from the luggage is because you're telling them, yeah, my suitcase is sitting in the North Terminal of Barcelona Airport. So you telling me that you don't know where it is seems a little unrealistic.
Yeah, I think it's like the initial concern is that all of these tons of people are getting these and they're sending off signals. And so that could mess with the airline thing or like all the communications like other devices. But I think I saw somewhere that it was like they basically didn't say it's expressly allowed. And so it kind of got like misinterpreted that meant it's banned, but it's not. They just don't have any policy on it because it does make sense. Like, are they going to take it out of your bag or something like that? Or that sounds like a mess. I don't know how they could actually enforce that. So it isn't actually their policy was what it ended up being. It's just like, yeah. So just to clarify, if you saw that headline and were like, oh no, I can't take my AirTag now. But I like what you said is it does make sense that airlines might not love these because they are, while it's great for the passengers who never lose their bags now, it is like a story that luggage has been really bad this summer and like people are using AirTags a lot more now because it's kind of necessary. So
yes,
at least that's working out for the product.
Yes, it is. I have one of the Belkin holders, which is specifically got a cable in it. It's an actual metal cable to hold the AirTag onto my case, which means that it isn't going missing. But it does look like some airlines really do want to get rid of these AirTags. That said, they never got rid of the tile, and tile was pretty darn effective. I remember when I left my house keys in a hotel in Amsterdam, and the hotel definitely hadn't found them until I said, well, the Bluetooth tracking device literally just picked it up about 3 minutes ago at reception in your hotel. So could you go and check lost and found again? At which point they magically refound my keys and were able to post them to me. So this is not exactly a new problem. I think AirTags are just more popular. So therefore, airlines are more aware of the problem. But there we go. Another piece of news from this week is, did your car just crash? Or were you actually on a roller coaster? And it looks like iPhone 14 and the Apple Watch and the crash detection inside of it is occasionally getting a bit confused on roller coasters when you're doing, say, a loop-the-loop. And it thinks that your loop-the-loop was more of a crash bang wallop into another vehicle. On the other hand, people are proving that the crash detection feature does indeed work, which is pretty cool. But I'm not sure if I would like my iPhone thinking that I've been in a crash when I'm upside down on a roller coaster at Universal Studios or Disney or similar, because you can't really get at your phone to say, no, don't call the emergency services in that case.
Yeah, especially, your whole family is like getting a text saying you've been in an accident and you're like, woo! So it's just like complete opposite. I feel like this is probably something that they didn't test at Apple. There's a Six Flags in the North Bay. They should go test that next time, because
I mean,
I've seen other YouTubers like do like in whole crash car rallies in fields and like total cars and things like that, just to test this feature, which I admit I totally considered. I was like, should I have a just bumper cars or like a racetrack kind of car things? Yeah, like those little ones. That'd be fun to try.
Yes, that definitely would be fun. But hey, if any engineers at Apple need a friend to take them on a day at Disney to test the roller coasters, I'm up for that. I'll happily fly out to Disneyland, California to help some Apple engineers out there. And fingers crossed this will get sorted pretty soon. And the final piece of news for today is Shazam. Shazam still exists, folks. And guess what? It's even available as a control center widget for you. And Shazam has added an update which shows you the songs identified by Siri to the music recognition history in the control center. So if I tap and hold on the icon in the control center on my iPhone, like I've just done, then so to be clear, Shazam, the control center, if I tap it once, will start listening for music. But if I tap and hold it, which is a really cool trick for lots of things in the control center, I can see which songs it has previously identified, and it'll show me that history so that I can, jump back and see where that song was. Tapping on any of these should take you to the music app or Shazam app, and then open it up there so that you can go to wherever it is that you would like to listen to it. And I know, Matthew, you are a big Shazam fan. You've got quite a few shortcuts for Shazam.
Totally. I think the huge thing with this was it used to identify those and save them to just that control center view, but it didn't actually sync them into the Shazam app. So for a lot of people, it was pretty much useless. It's like you can identify the song, but if you don't immediately write it down, you're not, or like don't go check that, it doesn't sync with your Shazam library, which many people have been using since like the first versions of the iPhone. So I think, and then shortcuts can also use Shazam, and it can trigger just like the listening, but then you can also get the different Shazam data out of that resource. So if you identify a song, you can actually get like the music video URL immediately out of it and then open into that, or like open into the Apple Music version or the Shazam page for it and stuff like that. So it's pretty useful. And I'm just glad that it's all hooked together, because it was kind of like, I always wanted to use this, but I just kind of didn't, because I knew that I wouldn't, it's supposed to all be in that. So it was kind of like, I could have, I guess maybe this came with iOS 16, and I was like, I thought we got this like a couple months ago, but it's kind of odd that they bought them years ago and just now it actually works the way you would want it to. So kind of funny.
Yes, yeah, it really is. Shazam, usually when you recognize, because you can also, without using the control center, you can just say, hey, Apple lady, the magic incantation, which I'm not saying so that all of my devices don't go off here. And, what is this song? And even if Siri isn't playing the song, if Siri is playing the song, then it'll just read the information out and tell you what it is. But if it isn't playing the song, it's, and it can hear music playing, then it will just recognize it. That always got saved into the music app. But the control center stuff, it was a kind of 50-50 for me as to whether or not it actually went into the music app, which seems silly. It seems like it all should have been connected together. But, maybe it was, and somebody just kind of missed a little link somewhere in the background.
Yeah, exactly.
It's hard to say. But Shazam is available still on Android as well, and on iOS and more. And it's just a useful little app to keep in your arsenal of tools, so that when somebody goes, what is that song? You can tell them. Now, especially as Matthew is here, we have made time for a double Shortcuts Corner. So now it's time for Shortcuts Corner, the part of the show where you write in with your shortcuts requests, and it's usually just me that answers them, and Micah asks lots of good questions. But this week we have myself and Matthew to answer your shortcuts questions. So I have saved a couple in preparation for this episode. And the first question that we have today is from Digital DIY Geek, who has asked a more philosophical question about shortcuts. which is, I've listened to you a lot on automators, and I would really like to see how you lay out the idea for building a shortcut. It's like I get inside and forget everything I know, and sure, I get it done, but not without a lot of Googling. I'm just wondering if you use an outline, and Digital DIY Geek did have a couple of other comments that they included in their message, but I thought that this would be something really good to talk about, especially as Matthew's here, because how he and I approach building a shortcut is potentially very different. And for me, I know it kind of varies as to what I'm actually doing when I build the shortcut as to how I build it. Because one of the things that I always do when I'm building a shortcut is I take a step back and go, okay, what is it that I'm actually looking to do? You know, if I'm here and I want this as my end result, like what are the actual parts of this? I don't just start at the beginning and keep going. I take a step back and I try and look at it and go, okay, well, if the end result is that I have a whole project created, for example, okay, then what are the different parts of that? Well, I'll need a list in reminders. I need a folder in notes. I need a folder in files. I need these tasks created in my new reminders list, and so on and so forth. And so I'll try and break it down. And if it makes sense to, then I might actually make these as multiple shortcuts. And then I'll just have one big shortcut, you know, a key overall shortcut, which has a run shortcut action in for each step. Because then that allows me to say, oh, actually, no, today, you know, I don't want the reminder section. You know, I'm just going to get rid of that. And I can just delete that whole section without even thinking about it. But then on a slightly, you know, more detailed side of things, you know, when I'm on my iPhone and I go, okay, I'm opening shortcuts, okay, and then, you know, I'm going to go back and I'm going to create a shortcut. Sometimes even before I do that, I'll just create a folder if I'm, you know, messing around with things, and just call it test shortcuts, because this gives me a place where I know that, you know, these are the things kind of in progress that I'm getting started with. And so if I just pop open that, then I can just see, you know, there's no shortcuts here, and then I can just add a shortcut and start thinking about, you know, what is it that I need? Because when you are trying to accomplish something, say, for example, you just want to add a calendar event for this time next week. Okay. Well, first of all, I need to think about it. Okay, so I need the calendar event. This time next week is actually the first part that I need. And so I would then think, you know, and just thinking, you know, what information do I need in that action can be very helpful. So if I just use the calendar event as the example action, you know, you can see the calendar. I could add a new calendar. That's not what I wanted to do. I wanted to create a calendar event, add new event. You can see there's a title, there's the start date and time, and the end date and time. And when I tap on this arrow over on the right-hand side, then I can see even more information. And I can also choose whether or not the compose sheet is enabled. Now, compose sheet, show when running, preview, all of those options are things that may mean that, like, you know, something pops up and I have to tap it to continue. So I'll usually start by turning things like that off. But when I'm looking at this, if I need a little bit of help, then I always check on the icon in the top left of a shortcut section. I tap on that and then look at show info, because this will show me a list of all of the different parameters I can give that shortcuts action, and then what it gives me at the end. Because what it gives you at the end can be very, very useful. So at the end of this, I get an event. That's an actual event. And if I had used it as a file, that could be a calendar event file, an ICS file. But, you know, I can take that information and I can actually do something with it. And an example of seeing that this is being done is I'm just going to use the adjust date action, and I'm going to drop this in at the start of my shortcut. And so now I'm just going to add one. And I've managed to completely crash shortcuts there, which is lovely. Well done, Rose. But there we go. So I'll just add one day to the current date. And remember, there's lots of magic variables which always exist. So if I tap into the date field and then scroll across, I can use current date. Right now, there's no connection between these two actions. But if I tap into the tomorrow at midday blank space, then I can see the adjusted date variable. And now, this is really difficult to see. So even if you're looking at the video and you don't see it, try doing this on your phone, or create a text action and another text action. And just in the second text action, put the variable from the first one. There's a line between these two actions. Okay, that shows you that these two things are actually connected to each other. Okay, and that just, knowing what connects to what can be very useful. And so I often do things like that. I don't necessarily actually sit down and create an outline of a shortcut before I create it, but I certainly do create lists of things that I need to do in my shortcut. Here are the big picture steps that I'm looking to do, so that I can, keep those in mind. But I also try not to get too bogged down in the details. How about you, Matthew? How do you approach creating shortcuts?
Yeah, I think it does a lot depend on the different situations where I'm doing it. I do tend to find an app and then look at what they have available and try to make shortcuts for that, which sometimes honestly isn't the best approach. That's like creating the tool before I have the problem that I'm really solving. So I think a big thing is really trying to make sure you understand which problem you're trying to solve, which I'm not gonna lie, I always found the least helpful advice for programming was think of the problem you want to solve, because I don't know what problems can be solved. So I think a huge thing that I had to do when I got into what was workflow at the time was I looked at every single action in the app, and mostly the scripting actions, but that's kind of another level of things, because I think a lot of people don't understand just can this even work with shortcuts? And if something doesn't, and you go through a lot of those pro apps that we mentioned, like Toolbox Pro, and these ones that augment some of what is honestly just missing from shortcuts. You can't work with Google Sheets or something, but there is a third-party app that can send stuff to Google Sheets. So I think there's kind of understanding which realms shortcuts can solve, which is most of the time apps on your phone. But then there's also this level of shortcut scripting tools where you can ask yourself questions and collect data and then send it into an app rather than pulling it from some other app. So I think what I tend to do for every shortcut is I put in a comment action at the top saying, what is this shortcut and what is it doing? Because I think that's a super common thing, is just not really, you get bogged down in the steps and don't remember where you're going or why. And then another helpful thing is to really understand where you're going to use the shortcut. Is this a share sheet shortcut? Is this going to be in the menu bar on your Mac? Or are you going to run this as an automation where you never even interact with it at all? Because then that kind of defines, are you going to ask yourself questions while the shortcut is running, or does it need to work without any interaction, or is it just a one-click thing that I do really quickly? So there are also many different types of shortcuts, and it just kind of depends on what need you're trying to solve again. I think what you were kind of saying, Rosemary, about starting at the end and then working backwards to fill in that data is also super helpful, because shortcuts, you'll start with this empty event that you wanted to get created, and you need to figure out how to get in the date before that or something like that. And then I think what gets confusing is then there's always multiple ways to get that information, and then that's where there's not also tons of Google resources, because it gets all very specific, and I haven't written a story about how I ask for dates in my calendar event shortcuts, because that's such a specific feature and shortcuts is still fairly brand new. So I think a great piece of advice is to ask the communities and things like that. There are tons of people who can help get past separate steps, or help you with, if you share your shortcut online, and then people can take that and add a couple steps and share it back to you. That's always honestly the community is a really strong part of shortcuts, and without that, I think a lot of people are going to be lost. So I would recommend looking for people. Another super helpful thing is that I just want to clarify, I didn't know this until I literally worked at the app and sat next to someone who did this. If you tap on the app icon of an action, it will show you the definition of what it does and the name and the inputs and outputs that it shows. And so I'm sure you've done that plenty of times on the show, Rose, but I didn't just realize that was a button that showed the preview. And then you can see, oh, this only accepts text and things like that. And then if you look at the action above it and it outputs text, and then you connect those together, it should work. And so that's kind of, but like, I think those file types also, like text, it doesn't mean anything to me, but like that could be a very specific piece of information. So I think that's where I honestly try to build a bunch of guides to help people just recognize here are different ways, problems you can solve shortcuts, and then different ways to approach those different problems.
Yes.
Yeah, I think then, I guess that's pretty much it. Like, I think learning all the scripting actions and shortcuts and really just like knowing what's possible and what isn't helps you, because now I just like know, oh, I can't do that. I don't even try to build a shortcut, versus some people might like bang their head on a wall for hours, not realizing that this just isn't possible yet, which is definitely a shame.
Yes, yeah. It's one of those things where it can certainly feel like you don't really know what you're doing, or there's a lot of limitations in place. The information that Matthew mentioned, you can also get to it if you're looking at, say, here, for example, I've pulled up all of the actions for agenda, which is recently added shortcuts actions. You can tap on the info bubble on the right, and that will show you, the definition and the input and output. And that's the same thing that you'll get if you tap on that little icon on the top left, and then you tap show info. It will give you all of that. The other thing I would encourage people to think about is there is no best solution for these things, okay? The best solution is the one that you created that works, that solves your problem. And it's very easy to get hung up on what is the best solution. Is it better for me to ask for input with a particular, text so that I know that this is the title of the event, and then to put that information into something? Or is it better for me to just tap into something and tap and ask each time? You know what? The solution that works that you've done is the one that's best. I would encourage you, if you're just getting started with this stuff, ask each time. It's a great tool. I would recommend that you definitely look at using that. And don't forget, look at the little magic variables that pop up, and the consistent variables that you've got. For example, device details is always there. When you add an if action, this is something that's very useful, because shortcuts exists in HomeKit actions too. So an if will automatically take the output of the previous information, but you can tap on that and clear it. But if I tap on this, then you can see I've got homes. Okay, so happen to have 3 HomeKit homes, my parents and mine and the test one. I can also just choose a variable. I can just get my clipboard. I can use the current date. I can use the device details, or I can use the input from my shortcut, or other things that have been created as part of this. And this all shows up when I tap on the if action. And if you add something, it automatically, just like this one did. So when I added something to the end and it gets something and you're like, no, I don't want that. Just, you can tap on it and you can tap clear. And if you tap on something and you're like, oh, but I don't want to just do whatever it's giving me here. If you tap on something, for example, and it opens the file picker and you don't want the file picker, try tapping and holding on that little input bubble. And then you should it should pop into something like this, or give you the select variable option so that you can jump into it, so that you can actually choose something else.
That is a huge tip, because there's a lot of menus and shortcuts that are hidden behind a long press, and you might not recognize that. Or like that, the folder one is a great example. If you click on it, it'll always try to have you manually select a folder. But if you want to use something from a previous step, you have to know to tap and hold on it to be able to show that menu.
Yes.
And also for that ask each time thing, I don't know exactly when they added this, because one day I clicked on it and it worked. But if you click on the ask each time variable, you can give it a prompt now. Instead of it just showing you like pick a photo, you can actually give it a title that says like, please select which GIF you want to use, or something like that. And then you can kind of clarify for yourself as each step goes what your instructions are as you go along. Because otherwise, a big thing with like multi-step shortcuts is you get lost when you're at 4th step. You're like, I don't know what it's showing me photos, but I don't remember why I need these right now. Like guiding yourself through that shortcut, through the prompts, and through ask for input also has those. That's a huge thing for making your shortcuts.
I did not realize
also.
that. Thank you, Matthew. So just to show people what that is, tap into. So for example, I've got the add calendar event action here. There's this ask each time action. Okay, so I just tap on that. Okay, and it's giving me a date and time. When I tap on the ask each time, there's a prompt and I can put in, start date, for example. And that can be really useful. Every so often when you're using, if I have lots of ask each time in here, they might not pop up in the exact order that I'm expecting them to. So just having that little reminder can be very, very useful. And also just so folks know, it will then just pop up, your standard date time pickers. If it's a date time, it'll pop up a text box. If it's text, it automatically selects it. So this is really, really helpful. So thank you for that tip, Matthew. I did not realize that, and I'm very glad to have learned something today, because that's the trick with any automation, right? We're always learning. We're always learning how to solve these problems.
That one in particular is like you can end up giving yourself a bunch of prompts and using a lot of steps, whereas now with Ask Each Time on a single action, you can kind of create your own custom prompts, and it's just like less steps, which is nice.
Yes, definitely. So before we dive into the rest of Shortcuts Corner, we have another message from Micah.
Hey, quick break here. Don't worry, they will be back shortly. Thank you, Matthew Cassinelli. Thank you, Rosemary Orchard. I'll see you next week. But I want to take a quick break to tell you about Bitwarden, who are bringing you this episode of iOS Today. So happy that Bitwarden is sponsoring iOS Today. See, Bitwarden is the only open source cross-platform password manager that can be used at home, at work, or on the go, and is also trusted by millions. With Bitwarden, you can securely store credentials across personal and business worlds. And October, this month, is Cybersecurity Awareness Month, and Bitwarden would like to remind everyone about key actions that you should be taking. First, you should be using strong passwords, and Bitwarden can help with that because it generates and stores those strong passwords for you. You should also be enabling multi-factor authentication on all of your accounts, including your password manager. It's also recommended that you keep your software up to date and take steps to recognize and report phishing. Remember, weak or stolen passwords represent the majority of successful hacking attacks. Using strong, unique passwords for every account. I'm always telling people, strong, unique, pseudo-random passwords to protect you and your business from those attacks. Bitwarden can create, save, and autofill passwords for you, so you don't have to go and type them all in, letter by letter, number by number, symbol by symbol. Multi-factor authentication is the easiest way to add extra security to your accounts. Enabling two-step login on Bitwarden improves the security of your password vault with options like verification through email or Authenticator app available for all accounts, and FIDO2 or YubiKey OTP available for premium subscriptions. Premium subscribers can also have Bitwarden generate TOTP authentication codes for your accounts, adding strength to your passwords. Bitwarden supports security for all with fully featured free accounts available to everyone. This Cybersecurity Awareness Month, you can protect yourself and help protect loved ones by educating them on password security and starting up a free Bitwarden account today. Bitwarden is also a must-need for your business. It's fully customizable and adapts to your business needs, including through the use of Bitwarden Send, a fully encrypted method to transmit sensitive information, whether text or files. Generate unique and secure passwords for every site with enterprise-grade security that's GDPR, CCPA, HIPAA, and SOC 2 compliant. Bitwarden recently added even more enterprise capability by adding SCIM support to make it even easier to provision and manage users. Their Teams organization option is $3 a month per user, and their enterprise organization plan is $5 a month per user. Share private data securely with coworkers, across departments, or the entire company. Individuals can use their basic free account forever for an unlimited number of passwords, or upgrade anytime to their premium account for less than $1 a month. The family organization option gives up to 6 users premium features for only $3.33 a month. At Twit, we are fans of password managers. I talk about them all the time. Bitwarden is the only open source, cross-platform password manager that can be used at home, on the go, or at work, and is trusted by millions of individuals, teams, and organizations worldwide. Get started with a free trial of a Teams or Enterprise plan, or get started for free across all devices as an individual user at bitwarden.com/twit. That's bitwarden.com/twit. bitwarden.com/twit. Thank you, Bitwarden, for sponsoring this week's episode of iOS Today and for making so many people all the more secure. I really appreciate it. Now we head back to the show. Rosemary Orchard and Matthew Cassinelli, take it away.
Matthew, we have two challenges in here, one of which I'm not 100% certain we can solve completely on iOS, but we're going to give it a go. And it's from Simon. So Simon has written in and said, love your show and enjoy it every week. Do you know a way to read and write MP3 tags using shortcuts actions? The only way I found for writing so far is the encode action that lets you provide metadata, but this is not an option for me because the action changes the extension of my file to MP3 to MP4, and there are tag fields that I can't change this way, such as comments. Is there an extension app kind of like Toolbox Pro which provides such actions? Thanks a lot. Greetings from Germany, Simon. So Simon says he needs an action which will let him do a little bit more when it comes to MP3s. Do you know of any app that might be able to help him, Matthew?
I don't. The only one that I know of that does that kind of, is that like the chapter type tagging that something like Forecast can do, but that's not.
Yeah, something supported. Similar to that. Yeah.
So I don't know, unfortunately. I do think I noticed he said that it converts it to. Okay, actually, there isn't an it's M4A. And Shortcuts doesn't have a MP3 option.
No, but there is something we should mention.
Didn't that become public domain in the last couple of years? Like that could be something that they couldn't have done when we were workflow, but actually now I'm writing down feedback to file to Apple because yeah. So I wish this would stay as MP3 for you, Simon, but there is a tip that people should know about when it comes to this encode media action. There is a toggle here for audio only, and if you turn that toggle on, then it lets you choose the format as M4A or AIFF. And that will help you with encoding things to, change potentially the metadata. Of course, this isn't perfect, but one of the apps that I feel I should mention, which is definitely going to be helpful for this, even though it's not got shortcut support explicitly for this, is Ferrite. Ferrite is my go-to for doing anything that's not just playing audio on iOS, because it can do so much. So I would definitely recommend looking at that. And I'm now wondering if Ferrite maybe could, maybe if we all write to the lovely developer Ferrite and say, hey, is there any chance that you could add shortcuts actions for adding MP3 tags or tags to an MP3 file, then they would do that. We'll have to find out and see. The other solution that I don't know personally because I'm not a Python developer, but there is an app called Pydo, and I've seen some resources that you could technically use shortcuts to use Pydo to then use Python to tag it with MP3 data, but that is definitely going to be a lot more complicated. But if you are if it's necessary and that's what you're in for, look that up, because a lot of people on Reddit have done deeper things like this. So it's always a good resource for specific shortcuts like that.
Yes. Yeah. Another app that might be useful, though I don't believe it has support for this explicitly, is Scriptable. Scriptable by Simon Stovering, the creator of DataJar and Jayson, has support for doing lots of things. So previously, if you wanted to update a calendar event and you didn't want to just delete it and re-add it, then Scriptable was the way you would go. And it can do all sorts of things, like formatting dates in particular ways, doing document pickers and so on. It can even create gradients for you for various things, which is quite nice. So definitely worth checking that out. And fingers crossed, something will work for Simon so that he can get those comments added to his MP3 files. And if you have an app that you think will solve Simon's problem or is worth mentioning as a useful app, as a shortcuts tool, then please do let us know so that we can pass that along. The next question that we've got comes from Kevin. Kevin, not the person who is doing the wonderful stage management behind the scenes today, who is getting everything done. But Kevin has written in, and he wrote in a little while ago, but I saved this one, Matthew. And he said he's recently adopted shortcuts due to the world of shortcuts being opened up whilst watching the recent episode with Matthew Cassinelli. So it's good job you're back, Matt. or Matthew. And he says he's created and imported several shortcuts that are extremely useful, but one task is very difficult to do. I have my salary payslips emailed to me every week, but I have to remember to save them, and sometimes I forget. Is there a way to automatically save the PDF email attachment I receive from the specific email address to my iCloud files? Regards from Kevin. Well, I think, Matthew, that you and I both know that we can create a shortcuts automation for when a particular email is received. And I was wondering if you wanted to demonstrate creating that.
Sure. I've already got it queued up. We're on the same page. So the reason I don't have this on my website is because this is not possible to share. Automations and shortcuts aren't shareable right now. And specifically the email and messages ones are very powerful, but have to be an automation for it to function at all because they have a really weird input. So basically when you go into shortcuts and create a new personal automation, you can come in and do email or messages and then kind of pick some of those details that he was mentioning, a specific received from the specific email address. So the sender, you kind of just do choose, type in the email address, and then that one filter. I guess you might want to make sure you don't get any other emails. Otherwise, this will also pop up when that happens. But you could also then add the subject line. I'm assuming it's going to be the same for those kind of things. But basically, let's just do... I'm just going to do pay stub as the subject. And then once you click next and go into the shortcut, the really weird thing about this is that they don't really clarify anywhere else. I'm going to just show you the variables that are available for the shortcut input, which basically means the email information that's coming in. So just to put set variable in and then set it to the shortcut input, then we can see tapping on shortcut input these different types of data we can extract from the email itself. And so this isn't available anywhere else in shortcuts, but you can get the email, the subject, the sender, recipients, attachments, the content of the email. So you can basically create your own shortcut responding to just this email using the data from that email and have something happen after that. So like he was saying, he wants to save it to my iCloud files. I would just say like, I'm going to set the variable input to the shortcut content and then do something like save to files. Although I guess it's save file now. And then I think the other step, here's a good example of the debugging thing is like, that's the end point. But now I'm assuming he would want to name the file as well. So it's not just like attachment XYZ or whatever like that. So you could actually put the name and have it include like the sender or the subject line or something like that. Mm-hmm. And then
you could also include the current date in there.
Totally. I guess I would do that. What's the, as a developer, it should always be the current date first. And then this is where you would use ISO 8601.
Year, month, day. Yeah.
Which ISO does on its own.
Yeah.
So this is a new feature, by the way, in iOS 16.1. Do you see this, Rose? It shows you an example of the date and time format. This is really helpful if you do custom. Actually, I could just do it right now of showing like if this would be, I think it's DMMM YY, or no, wait, it's year, month, day. Right? What is it?
Yeah, it would be year, month, day. The reason why developers like using year, month, day as the date formatting is because this way it always sorts chronologically. If you do, for example, month, day, year, then whatever happens in January, be that in 1971 or 3001, will always come first, and then it will get sorted by day within that. But if you have year, month, and day at the beginning of your file name, then of course it will be sorted by oldest to newest, or if you reverse your sort the other way around, newest to oldest, and at the top, and it just flows down from there, which is quite a useful way of using your dates. But of course, if you're just putting this in a file name, then it doesn't really matter, what you name it as long as you will be able to find your payslip when you're looking for it. That's the important part.
I just wanted to do the official way that you said. And so then you can also use the make PDF action to actually convert the email. Let me type it and then just the content. And so this should be able to then save all of your renamed PDF into files in the exact same spot. And so the weird thing with this email automation is that you have to run it from the notification. This is one of those ones that doesn't have the allow or don't. What is it?
Ask before running.
Run without asking. Yeah, they have a double negative in the way you phrase it. But so this is, I think, the major thing that Apple could do to improve this is allow me to. It does say when I get an email subject containing pay stub, that's a little clear, but I just want to name these automations so that when it shows up, I just know like, oh, it's pay stub. It's like my pay stub shortcut, and then I can run it, or like some way to run the shortcut without it having to be an automation as well, because these hooks are here for mail and messages. I think Apple's just really concerned that people are going to try to automate every single email that comes in and then end up in a really bad situation where you like reply to your boss automatically without meaning to, or something like that. But I feel like those are things that we should get in iOS 17 at this point, because I think Shortcuts users, I think this feature in particular is really useful, but it's held back by being an automation like this and kind of not being shareable at all, and requiring it to be in that field means you can't even like recreate it for somebody else and send it to them. But for Kevin, you should be able to do this exactly. So congratulations on getting paid.
Yes, exactly. One thing I did want to mention, if you are looking to do this yourself, and you're going, wait, but my payslip is it's a attachment on that email, then you'll still be able to do that. And so you have to fill out one of these. So I'm just going to pop the word pay in there because I won't be saving this one. Then what you can do is you can actually set your variable. Not set your cat, set your variable. Pet tax is welcome if you're requesting something from Shortcuts Corner, but you don't have to send in a picture of your pet. It would be good if Shortcuts would perhaps stop concentrating on the cat pictures and instead find the action that I'm looking for there. And so what you can do is, if you use the shortcut input, then when you tap on that, then you can get your attachments, and then you can just say, these are my attachments, and you can save the attachments somewhere else, which can be very, very useful if you are looking to just get all of the attachments off of a particular thing. That totally gives you that option. So,
and if you know it has multiple attachments, I would also recommend using something like get item from list to specify like the first or the second attachment if you know that it's the same every time, because then you're not like saving their the image in their email signature or something like that.
Yes. One thing you can do on that is actually there is a filter files action, which nice. You can then pop onto that, and then you can say, for example, the file extension is PDF. And that will then mean that even if the order of the file attachments changes for some reason, you're just getting the ones that are PDFs. So you can easily work around that, and that gives you a nice little easy way to handle the fact that your payslip may also have your boss's email signature with that silly cat animation that he always likes to put in there, which is very entertaining, but not quite your payslip. So
that's why I love doing
crossed.
this with you, because we both have, it's like those are both perfectly good. So I like mine probably, I do kind of have the ones that might fail sometimes. And so I'm always glad that you have that programmer background too, of being like, no, check the file type. That's probably a better way to do it. But again, there's always multiple ways to solve something in Shortcuts.
Exactly. And that's one of the reasons why it's so much fun doing Shortcuts Corners, because everybody writes in and gives feedback. There was some great feedback the other day about how, my suggestion for potentially handling every other day would indeed fall over at the end of the year, and your fish might get fed twice. But also, you probably missed a day, in that whole crazy season between Christmas and New Year anyway. So fingers crossed. But it's lovely to see different ways to solve things and get feedback from folks. And if you are looking to get in touch with us, then please feel free to send in your Shortcuts Corner requests or feedback, and we'll have our regular feedback section again next week. But now, as we come in towards the end of the show, I hope, Matthew, that you have your app cap ready, because it is time for our app caps.
I'm back.
All right, and now it's time for the App Cap section of the show, where we round off the show by picking an app or a gadget for the week and telling you all about it and why we've picked it. And so I'm actually going to kick things off today because my App Cap is my App Cap. Yes, I've gone very, very meta today. I've gone extra nerdy. My App Cap is, or my cap is, a sort of lilac, like running sleep band with Bluetooth headphones built in, and it is my App Cap. So I actually have a TV in my bedroom that has Bluetooth built into it. Okay, and it allows me to listen to things as I'm falling asleep, and just because that's how my brain works. I don't necessarily like using the speakers or my HomePod minis or whatever at night to play the audio. It's quite nice just having it to nice and quiet, like next to my ears. But if I'm wearing big headphones, over-ear headphones, I can't lie down with those in. And if I'm wearing AirPods, I've lost more than one AirPod in bed overnight and then had to spend like 10 minutes digging for it the next morning, which is just not fun when it's hidden in a pile of blankets and whatever. And I'm a bit concerned they might get damaged. So I picked up this on Amazon. I should note that there is an Amazon sale on for the next few days as we record this show. It's another Prime Day. I thought Prime Day was in June or July, and it's happening again. Either way, there's some good deals on Anchor stuff. This particular one, it looks like it's currently selling for about $20 on Amazon, but you can get plenty of these at various different prices. But it just wraps around my head. It's got tiny little speakers in, which are just like hovering over my ear. They're very small and round, but I can lie comfortably on a pillow with these in and still hear what's going on the TV. And the speakers do move a little bit as well. You can maneuver them around inside of the band. And as a bonus, with the cost of energy going up this year, it also helps keep my ears and head a little bit warm, which is quite nice if you're just lying there and you just want to, use things like this. You can also use these for running. I'm not going to say that the audio quality is amazing. I don't particularly love pressing buttons on my head to control the power and the audio, but they're pretty cheap and they are certainly easier than losing an AirPod in bed, which was the previous solution. Yeah, exactly. So it's certainly worth looking at. If you are looking to use, good your AirPods for running or similar, then it might just be worth looking for a headband that you can put over your AirPods to keep them in place. But for me, where I wanted something that I could wear in bed, this is what I ended up with. Yes, I picked this one because it comes in a shade of, I'm not sure if it's more lavender or lilac. It's not quite
very Rosemary,
rose purple, but it's good enough. It's good enough. It's not amazing quality, but it's perfectly good enough for things like the murder mysteries that I apparently like watching late at night, so that then I get a really good night's sleep. Not sure I can recommend that either, but they're pretty good, and I definitely am enjoying these. I think I got them for like $15 on sale or something, so definitely keep an eye out for offers. But yeah, it's a sleep headband for these, and of course I can connect them to my Apple TV too, which is how I actually have them output the audio, which works very nicely. So Matthew, what's your app cap today?
Mine is the Hydrate Spark Pro Steel 21-ounce smart water bottle plus bonus straw lid from Apple, this is the smart water bottle from the company's Hydrate Spark. I don't have the steel one. I got the black one. And I'm mentioning this because I'm actually dumb and I lost mine and I'm buying it again because it's actually worth it. And so that's kind of like,
okay.
It's totally, I'm dumb for wasting money losing it, and that is the problem with buying an expensive smart water bottle. But I really like it because it has a little color on the bottom, so it'll notify you to drink water throughout the day. And their app is actually a really good experience where it'll show you how much water you should have drank by that time of day normally, and if you're ahead or behind. And so I do think the whole experience of it logs like you charge it like every 2 weeks or something like that. It's really not that bad. And then just like when you fill it up, it kind of senses that there's new water in. And when you take a sip, the little thing at the bottom that has the light in it is also the motion accelerator, and it can tell you drank some. And so it just logs it straight into health. And I found it just like made me think about intentionally drinking a lot more water. And I definitely have a problem of drinking a lot of seltzer and not staying properly hydrated, because that isn't always super hydrating. And so this has been, I wasn't really sure about it, but once it was gone, like for real, I was like, man, I actually missed that. And it was nice. And it just kind of, maybe it's like one of those mindset things where you're like, I'm a person who's trying to drink more water rather than just like not thinking about it or something. So I actually was fairly impressed, and I'm going to get it again. So I feel like that is kind of the ultimate a testament. I mean, like if you lose it, you're like, dang it, I want that back.
The thing that strikes me, Matthew, is I was looking at getting one of these, and if I got it, I was going to use it as my app cap. So, I think you sold me on this. I should note that they come in steel and plastic, and I believe just the stainless steel is a dishwasher safe one. The body of it, the other ones are not dishwasher safe. If you check on Amazon, they have other colored steel ones and plastic ones as well. There's also a hydrate tap where you can like tap your phone to an NFC tag to log it. That to me does not sound anywhere near as cool or fun.
I can already do that. So
yeah,
that's
exactly.
Part of it is I have been using it alongside Waterminder and my log water shortcuts. And so I think I've sort of like got it fully rounded out. Like even from the Mac, I can use my Stream Deck to log it if I like had a glass of water there, but then the water bottle is tracking on its own. So I feel like it's pretty interesting. I'm going to try to make a video about it at some point.
Yes. Well, this has now gone from my, I think I want this list to, yeah, I'm definitely getting one of these. So thank you for that, Matthew. You've stolen a future app cap from me, but in a very good sense. So I'm very pleased about that. And of course, thank you for joining us on this episode of iOS Today. Micah will be back next week, but it's been really good fun having you and getting to talk about shortcuts and going nerdier on iOS than we occasionally do on the show. But don't worry, we'll be back to our regularly scheduled programming next week. And I believe we'll be taking a good look at some astronomy apps. But of course, if you've got any questions or requests, then you are welcome to email those to us at iOStoday@twit.tv, where you can send us your Shortcuts Corner requests, your feedback, whatever it is. You can find out about all of that and, just email us your questions and send it in. You are also welcome to join us live as we record the show, which is every Tuesday at noon Eastern, 9 a.m. Pacific, or 5 o'clock here in the UK, which is a good time. Though don't forget, with the whole daylight savings change coming at the end of the month, you're best off using UTC if you're over here in Europe like me. Other than that, the best way to get our show is by downloading it after it's done. Yes, because that's all of our wonderful backstage folks who are sitting there quietly doing all of the great things like showing you the webpage, have done all of their magic work so that you can subscribe to the audio or video and download it in your podcast player of choice. But if you really love the show and you really love Twit, you should be checking out Club Twit. Club Twit is available for $7 a month, and it gives you access to wonderful bonus episodes of things. So we have entire shows just for our Club Twit members. Yeah, entire shows, really. So there's Hands on Mac, there's the Untitled Linux show, and so many other great things. You get to talk to other avid listeners and fans of the show. I love hanging out in the iOS Today channel in the Club Twit Discord. Some really great questions that folks are asking there, and sharing really useful information. Some great deals have been popping up there in the last couple of days as well, thanks to this Amazon Prime deal that's going on. So you should check that out. But if you're there going, I love iOS Today, not yet sure about the rest of the network. First of all, you should check it out. Mac Break Weekly, definitely worth looking at if you are interested in the idea of any other Twitch shows. But you can also just sponsor iOS Today through Apple Podcasts if that's more your jam. Other than that, we are also available around the internet. Matthew, you should tell everybody where they can find you so that everyone knows where they can catch you elsewhere.
Sure. MatthewCassinelli.com is my website, and I have a whole shortcuts gallery where I've collected, I think, 600 shortcuts in my shortcuts library. I have a whole membership program where you can get even more shortcuts and bundles of those shortcuts that I've created this whole fancy system. I've got an action directory where I actually list out all of the actions in shortcuts. So I was mentioning before that people should go look at all of those. I've got them on my website as well, which is helpful because it's nowhere else online. And then to keep up with me and all my shortcut stuff, I have a newsletter. It's at MatthewCassinelli.com/newsletter, and that makes it easy. I just publish every Monday new shortcuts news and stuff that I've seen on Twitter and stuff like that. So good resource for staying up on shortcuts over time.
Wonderful. Thanks. And if folks are looking for me on the internet, you can find me at rosemaryorchard.com, which has links to this podcast and other podcasts that I do, as well as my books. And of course, you can find me at Rosemary Orchard on Twitter and hanging out in that Club Twit Discord, where I will be keeping an eye out for, I'm sure, some great questions that folks are going to have after this show. In the meantime, we will be back next week with another great show for you. And in the meantime, check out twit.tv/iOS to find out all of our other great episodes. Goodbye, folks.
Bye.
If you are looking for a midweek update on the week's tech news, I got to tell you, you got to check out Tech News Weekly. See, it's all kind of built in there with the title. You get to learn about the news in tech that matters. Every Thursday, Jayson, Howell, and I talk to the people making and breaking the tech news, get their insights and their interesting stories. It's a great show to check out, twit.tv/TNW.